All right, welcome to a new episode of the Opening Bid Unfiltered podcast. I'm Yahoo Finance Executive Editor Brian Sozzi. Like I always say, this podcast will make you a smarter investor, period. And you get smarter about all things defense here. This is just pardon the pun, exploding sector, especially here under the Trump administration. I want to focus in on one company looking to invest in the space through different avenues. That's Brooke Coburn, co-founder of Capitol Meridian. Brooke, good to see you here. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
Great to be with you, Brian. Thanks for the opportunity.
So your firm, founded in 2021. You spent many years working at the Carlyle Group. Take us through the firm's founding and what you're working on here, and again, also no pun intended, your mission for investors.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. So a little bit of background. So my partner and I started Capitol Meridian in 2021, and we did so after 25 years together at Carlyle. So, the firm that we're building is a specialist. So the biggest part of what we do is national security investing. We're based in Washington. We have one fund. We have one office. It's really all that we do. And as you probably know, if you've tried to follow what's going on in the government, it's a pretty esoteric space. So in navigating all of the complexity of the market is tricky. The government is not one entity. There are 400 different agencies and procurement offices. So it's a market for specialists. The firm that we started is really trying to do that one thing well. And we can talk more about that. But I think the background is important. So my partner and I started at Carlyle at a time when Carlyle itself, was one office and one fund and one strategy. And as those of you who've been doing this for a while may know, that's really where Carlyle first made its name, was investing around a lot of these sectors. We had a terrific experience there, experienced the firm going from a very small one-office firm with $1 billion to sort of the Goliath that they are today. But I'd say, as the firm grew, there was pressure to do larger and larger deals. And as we've seen, there's a lot of diversification. So, what we decided to do in 2021 was really to spin out and to build a firm that just narrowly focused around this esoteric area where we've been focused. And as you sort of alluded to at the outset, there is a lot going on. Geopolitically, this is probably the most fraught environment that we've been in at least a generation. So there's certainly a lot to invest in and a lot to talk about in a very fluid environment.
So Brooke, as we have been watching, the government has been shut down for weeks. This is not the only government shutdown we have worked through or invested through. How do these shutdowns impact what you do in terms of psychology and in terms of long-term planning?
Yeah, it's not a great thing for the American people. Clearly, it's not a great thing for the American worker. I'd say in terms of the things that we invest in, it has very, very little impact. And sort of here's why. When the government shuts down, there is a shutdown. It generally impacts the civilian agencies. So, think about all of the agencies, from the IRS to the State Department to, you name it. The things that we invest in touch the national security infrastructure. So think, companies that are serving Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the intelligence agencies. Those functions are essential, and the companies that serve those customers are also essential. So, I'm pleased to report, Department of Defense is still doing what they do. The intelligence community is still doing what they do. And the companies that we invest in that support them are still doing what they do. So the impact in terms of our companies and what we invest in is very, very minimal. But it is, not a great thing for the American people overall.
A year into President Trump, since he won the election on November 5th, what have you seen in terms of defense spending and budgets? And is that the main thinking or a part of your thesis looking out over the next few years when you put money to work?
Yeah. So obviously there's a significant investment that's occurring under the Trump administration around a wide range of national security priorities. In our world, we invest for the long term. So if you think about a typical private equity investment that may be held for 5 years or longer, sort of by definition, within that 5-year holding period, you're going to have at least one presidential election cycle, and you're going to have a couple of congressional investment cycles. So to have success in our world, you really can't be investing in the flavor of the day, the priorities of President Trump or narrowly focused on the priorities of President Trump, Biden, you really have to think sort of longer term. Like, what are the big challenges facing the country, the things that transcend any one leader? And national security is probably the single biggest of those areas. So, if you step back and you look at the world today and you look back, to start there, we were in a Cold War up until the early 1990s. At the end of that period, the world really had one superpower, the U.S., and that's been true for, I'd say, for most of the last 20 years. And of course, after 9/11, you had the U.S. national security apparatus heavily focused around the war on terror and on countering sort of terrorist operations around the world. If you fast forward to today, over the last 5 years or so, we've seen the rise of China as a real peer to the U.S. And so we're in this moment where the U.S. is sort of pivoting back from a national security standpoint to a multipolar world, and sort of retooling a lot of the technologies and capabilities. And bottom line is we're at the very beginning of what will be a substantial new investment cycle around capabilities that are designed to deter a new geopolitical rival.
I want to dig more into that, but real quickly, what are the differences you've seen between a Biden administration and Trump administration in terms of defense spending?
So I'd say the underlying investment theme around national security has been there all along, and so we were on an upswing. I'd say in terms of specific callouts for the Trump administration, there are a set of priorities that they have called out that I'd say reflect two big things. So one is what I was alluding to, which is the set of capabilities that you need in an environment where you're combating terrorists is very, very different than the set of capabilities that you need when you're dealing with a geopolitical peer. And the industrial base really needs to be reinvigorated. So there are a lot of investments that you're seeing across the Trump administration that are designed to sort of catalyze those types of investments. You've seen for the first time, for example, the government taking direct stakes in critical minerals companies as one example. I'd say in terms of the other big thing that is afoot, if you look at Ukraine, what you see is that commercial technologies have surpassed the capabilities of military systems in many instances. So just think about the success that off-the-shelf drones have had against the most advanced weapon systems. And so we're at a moment of sort of dislocation, a moment when there needs to be a new investment cycle and a new round of technology innovation. So Palantir is obviously a great example of that. There are lots of others. But the set of capabilities that you needed for yesterday's environment are very different than what's needed today. So if you look at the Trump administration, they're investing very heavily in autonomous systems, in AI, the Golden Dome, missile defense. There are many other examples of that. And those are areas that don't lend themselves to like immediate payback. These are going to be investments that will be sort of afoot for 5, 10, 15 years or longer. Those are the types of things that we're investing in.
Brooke, when you hear or when you see Russia test a delivery mechanism for a nuclear weapon, President Trump then says, I believe it was he reiterated this on 60 Minutes, that the U.S. will begin testing nuclear weapons. Where does your brain go as an investor?
So those are obviously scary themes to talk about. I'd say broadly, it just reflects the fact that we are back in an environment where the U.S. has real geopolitical peers. We are back in a Cold War environment, and there's a mindset shift that needs to sort of follow from that. And a set of investments that need to follow it. So if you look specifically at the areas where our peers have been investing heavily, hypersonic weapons is one of them, and one of the big reasons that you have the Trump administration so focused on the Golden Dome missile defense system is that our current missile defense systems, cannot stop. They were designed for a different era of ICBMs. They're not designed to counter hypersonic missiles. You have innovations in, I think, the specific example that Trump was responding to were nuclear-powered cruise missiles. Just continued example of the innovation that I described earlier. And so, the current battle that we have with our peers is really an innovation battle. You can see that most acutely with, semiconductors and all the tension around Taiwan and tariffs and so forth. But you can see it in lots of other areas as well.
Is it hard, and I'm not going to phrase this right, I'll do my best, but is it hard to invest in a potential nuclear war outbreak? Sure, there might be money-making potential there, but this is, to your point, this is serious stuff.
So we're not investing in weapons. We're not investing in nuclear weapons.
Okay, good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it's.
No, of course, of course. So here's how I think about it. President Reagan had this concept of peace through strength, and that concept has really carried over in the thinking of the U.S. for a couple of generations now. That is the sort of the critical thing that we're thinking about, which is where you have real geopolitical risk is when there's an asymmetry in capabilities. So, for example, Russia was not deterred by Ukraine, and you could see sort of where we are now. What's important is that if you have parity of capabilities, which is the primary source of deterrence, that's what prevents major wars from happening. And the U.S. is in a mode now, and NATO countries are early in that cycle as well, of investing in a next generation of deterrence. So to be clear, we're not predicting nuclear war, we're not predicting World War III, but I do think we're in an environment where we need to be very clear-eyed about the fact that our peers have been investing in a new set of capabilities that are threatening, and that requires a new investment cycle on the part of the Western Alliance to counter those capabilities and match them.
All right, hang with us, Brooke. We're going to go off for a very short break. We'll be right back on Opening Bid Unfiltered. All right, welcome back to Opening Bid Unfiltered here at the NASDAQ in Times Square. I'm having a really fascinating chat here with Brooke Coburn, co-founder of Capitol Meridian, who is investing in the defense sector. I was talking to a well-known investor in the tech space, Brooke, and he said, look, we're going to arrive at a point where our robots are doing war against Chinese robots. Is that something that is likely to happen in our lifetime, in part because of what we're seeing in AI?
There's no question there's been a huge set of investments and advancements in so-called autonomous systems. So in the popular mind, think of those drones in Ukraine, but in reality, they can take the form of land, sea, air, ground, and so forth. So that is probably the single biggest area of innovation around military systems worldwide. I think in Ukraine, earlier this year, you saw the first sort of fully autonomous assault where they used no ground troops at all and relied instead on autonomous systems. So I think the world is clearly heading in that direction. You can argue that there are positives associated with that, meaning you don't have human lives at risk. There are obviously some obvious negatives as well, but I think we're moving to a world where you're likely to see a lot more autonomous systems. I'd say I would call out examples to things like CCA, which is a U.S. program, which stands for Collaborative Combat Aircraft. That is a sort of a human and machine integrated formation, meaning that you would have U.S. fighter planes that would fly with companion drones that would operate together as a system, which would extend the range of sensors out over the horizon, would provide for enhanced surveillance capabilities, would also provide for enhanced ability to sort of attack targets. I think the future will hold a lot more of those systems. I think where you start to run into real ethical questions is when you don't have a human in the chain. Today, all of these systems have a human in the chain. They're using those capabilities to divine insights and make decisions faster, but you're not looking at sort of true Terminator.
Or even RoboCop, Brooke. RoboCop was what, half robot, half cop. I mean, there was something underneath that costume. Where do you, but do you think that's where we're headed? That there will not be a human in the chain?
I don't see that in the foreseeable future. I think you're using technology to leverage technologies to enhance information flow. If you look at what's deployed in Ukraine, drones are flying with dozens and dozens of sensors. So thermal, image, motion, RF sensors. All of that data is being absorbed into an edge computer and processed and then shared across other assets in the field and then back to headquarters. So you're leveraging technology in very sophisticated ways to make decisions faster. Like ultimately, this is a game of speed, and the party who can determine what's happening, develop situational awareness, and make decisions fastest is likely to prevail. Today, and I think for the foreseeable future, for ethical reasons, you will have a human in the chain. Whether our adversaries will have a human in the chain is a different question.
If I have this right, you are not just you're making investments in various sectors of defense. Like, talk to us about where you found some of your early investments here, and what's the thesis behind some of these early plays.
Yeah, national security is the largest part of our portfolio overall. It's not the only thing we do. So we invest in a pretty wide range of companies that are helping to modernize technology infrastructure. So that's everything from helping the government harden its cyber defenses to modernizing their ERP systems to helping, American cities enhance traffic safety around schools. So that's it's a wide aperture approach to investing around this sector. In national security specifically, I think a recent example would be a company like Clarity. So Clarity is a national security business. They are a full spectrum cyber business, meaning they provide a wide range of defensive and offensive cyber capabilities. They work really closely with a wide range of military agencies and intelligence agencies to basically provide those types of sort of forward capabilities that I was describing. So gathering information, divining insights quickly to make decisions faster. That's one example. Another example would be an investment that we just announced a month or so ago where we're acquiring a company called Beaufort. Beaufort makes protective equipment for military personnel. They provide a range of infrastructure to U.S. And all allied soldiers as well. So it's a range of things from flight systems. So they provide the pilot flight systems on the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter, all the way through submarine escape suits for submarine-based personnel. So those are areas that are really critical to force protection. They're also really critical if you think about the fastest growing defense budgets in the world. They're mostly in Europe in response to the threat from Russia. So those investments are designed to sort of ride that growth cycle as we look to sort of build out capabilities in the way that I described.
As you acquire these companies, Brooke, how do you interact with the management teams, and how do you what do you think how do you lay out a growth plan for the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing that we do. So we spend, first off, we're generally first institutional capital, meaning we are investing in companies that haven't worked with a private equity firm or a venture capital firm before. So most often, those companies have been owned and bootstrapped by a founder or a group of founders up to the point where they have a level of success in terms of programs and capabilities and contracts, but they need some help getting to the next level. And so typically what we're doing is we're spending a lot of time working with those teams to help build world-class operating teams. So, very often those companies will need help in rounding out sort of a top-graded professional operating team. We have very strong views around where those national security priorities are. And if you think about those growing defense budgets overall, the rising tide is you would think lifting all boats, but in reality, there are significant cuts that are occurring in legacy capabilities to free up capital to invest in a lot of the things that we described, like autonomous systems and AI and Golden Dome and so forth. So what we're trying to do with our companies is, first and foremost, build world-class operating teams. We've been doing this for almost 30 years. We have a deep bench of operators that we've worked with. We made about 60 investments in this space over a couple of decades. So we've got a deep bench of sort of the best and brightest people who have been successful entrepreneurs and building companies in this space. So we leverage those resources to help build a team. We try to get the companies aligned with those fast-running currents that I described. So, if there are ways that they can be helpful in tapping into AI, or missile defense or whatever the theme may be, that will support higher growth rates, higher levels of profitability. That's ultimately what strategic buyers want to own. We spend a huge amount of time working with our teams on organic growth. So it's bid and capture is the term of art in our markets, but helping them to build out new contract capabilities, to win new customers. We'll support them with M&A where that makes sense. And then we'll spend a lot of time on sort of hardening of operational processes and financial financial systems, and so forth. So it's a very holistic, hands-on approach. We will only make 8 or 10 investments per fund, so we're a very hands-on investor. And typically, we're not buying 100% of these companies. So, our pitch to an entrepreneur is listen, we're a sophisticated partner who knows your end markets. We'll provide some liquidity to those investors day one, and then we'll go forward as partners and try to build a company to the next level. And in our experience, 75% of the companies that we build will ultimately be acquired by larger strategic investors in the space. So the Boeings and Lockheeds and General Dynamics of the world are usually the best long-term owners of these companies.
I imagine you work with a lot of hardcore folks, especially in this space. Like, what is the leadership philosophy that you bring to the table and you've tried to impart on some of these folks, some of these entrepreneurs when you invest in their companies?
Yeah. So one of the things we really like, so we're investing capital on behalf of pension funds and endowments and a wide range of investors. And so we're trying to drive, 3x cash on cash returns. So there's a financial aspect to what we do. But to sort of get to your question, the thing that we love is there's a heavy missional aspect to this. Ultimately, if you do this well, you are helping to serve U.S. national security priorities. You're helping to keep Americans safe. So that double bottom line sort of missional aspect is one of the most exciting parts of our jobs. And the entrepreneurs that we work with are heavily mission driven. So generally they need help and they want help in a bunch of the areas that I described, whether that's top grading their teams. We don't bring a set of resources where we're prescriptive with our teams. We'll sit down and spend a lot of time with them saying, these are the different areas where we think we can help. These are the people that we think can be helpful as you try to enter new markets. These are the people that we think can help strengthen your operational capabilities. So I'd say it's a very bespoke approach. In general, it cuts across those areas that I described. So you're building world-class teams, you're aligning those teams with high-growth submarkets, you're helping on organic growth, you're driving operational improvement, and you're supporting M&A where that makes sense. But the playbook that we use, although it touches all 5 of those things in all cases, is very, very different in each instance because these companies all need different things.
I think you work on some real fascinating stuff. We're going to leave it there. Brooke Coburn, co-founder of Capitol Meridian. Look forward to staying in touch and following your journey. Really interesting.
Thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate the opportunity.
Appreciate it. All right, that's it for the latest episode of Opening Bid Unfiltered. Please continue to hit us with all that love on the podcast platforms and social media. I love the feedback. Hit me with questions on social media about any episode. I always will answer it. We'll talk to you soon.